Hello, welcome. This is another edition of Direct Talk. On today's session, I'm joined by Tigray Interim Administration President Getachew Reda. He is here to talk to me in the progress in the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, relations to the federal government, and situations in Tigray regarding the power struggle within TPLF. Getachew, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Let's begin with the recent headline, the power struggle within TPLF. Why power struggle in this critical moment?
Well, I have this feeling that to characterize as a simple power struggle would gloss over things. Although I tend to agree that this essentially is a power struggle that has gone awry. The TPLF leadership has been locked in a series of evaluation sessions, which unfortunately haven't yielded any result in terms of improving the lot of our people, in terms of addressing the core challenge the organization faces, in terms of what it could and should have delivered to the people of Tigray, especially in the context of the resistance that has been in place for the last 3 or so years, especially after the conclusion of the Pretoria Agreement. We didn't have much of a difference in terms of what we plan to do, as in we don't have a sort of clearly spelled out agenda that would serve as a ground for some kind of ideological difference here, but it has everything to do with whether people who have been in charge for quite some time will continue to be in charge, or whether the new dispensation that followed the establishment of the interim administration was equally acceptable and palatable to all of us. So it was very unfortunate. People in the leadership, especially within the executive committee, myself included, were not particularly invested in spelling out the future of Tigray and how to be able to rise up to the challenge that was posed following the conclusion of the Pretoria Agreement. Although at the outset there was a very concerted effort on the part of both the political leadership and the security top brass to spell out strategies of engagement. It was very unfortunate once the issue of the establishment of the interim administration came into the picture. The entire exercise to draw a roadmap was shelved, and we ended up engaging in petty squabbles, which only degenerated into sometimes acrimonious exchange of diatribes without really addressing the fundamental malaise of the party. And it's very unfortunate, despite overtures on the part of some of us to really accept the status quo and try to bring in new blood into the movement, including by abandoning our claims to the top leadership. It was very unfortunate. There was little in the way of willingness on the part of most of my colleagues. But be that as it may, the power struggle within the executive committee also translated itself into a rather deliberate sabotaging of this whatever success of the interim administration. It's not to say that the interim administration leadership was particularly strategic or insightful in terms of what it wanted to achieve, but the fact that the bulk of the TPLF leadership in the executive committee was not particularly happy about the turn of events simply meant that those of us who should have been in the business of charting a slightly new path to the future of Tigray were rather mired in either trying to explain our failures away in terms of what obstacles are being posed by the rest of the TPLF leadership. But equally important, the rest of the TPLF leadership was not particularly supportive of whatever scant efforts there were to put in place a semblance of functioning government in Tigray. So the real victims were the very people, especially those who are living in very dreary conditions in IDP camps, and those who should have been provided whatever support there could be, humanitarian or otherwise, in order to address the crisis, the post-war crisis that many parts of the population are currently mired in. So it is a power struggle in the sense that there were those who felt that they were denied of their rightful place to the leadership. And although I personally don't consider myself particularly interested in hanging on to power when there is little in the way of success that could be attributed to me, it however meant that whatever overtures I made or some of my colleagues made were often interpreted as an effort to torpedo the party itself, although there was little in the way of substantive discussion among the top leadership, much less the central committee level. So it was an absolute failure on the part of the political leadership, but unfortunately, because failure doesn't often have parents, it's all of us were trying to accuse each other of being part of that failure or responsible for the failure. But at least, as far as I was concerned, I found myself in the position of interim president, and of course it was my responsibility not only to listen to what my TPLF colleagues have to say, but also other members of the interim administration. So the executive committee, the rest of the executive committee of the TPLF leadership wanted to maintain things as they were. I mean, like they wanted to run the show from behind. And it was unfortunate that two of my deputies, for example, wouldn't accept any imposition from outside. So to the extent that TPLF had a role and should also come to terms with the fact that things have changed, and it should look at its role as only a partner to the process, not as an exclusive owner of the process. It was very unfortunate. People were not used to that kind of, I would call it benign neglect when it comes to taking every instruction they give you, lock, stock, and barrel. So that is not something I would countenance, not only because there are partners in the international in the interim arrangement, but also, more importantly, the circumstances would allow that there has to be some other means of including other voices than the TPLF Executive Committee. So obviously, we're not able to see eye to eye on a number of issues. But unfortunately, although I can squarely blame some of my colleagues on derailing the whole process of putting in place a functioning government, I cannot, however, free myself from the blame that as part of the executive committee, we have utterly failed in coming up with a strategic vision for the party. But so it was a difference between people who wanted to maintain the status quo and those of us, despite not having any clear idea of how to resolve it, who wanted some kind of tweaking in how the party works. So yes, ultimately it's a power struggle, and it has now degenerated into a situation where one group has trampled all the organizational procedures and the constitution of the party and other party institutions such as the Inspection Commission, including, of course, the federal electoral laws to conduct, hurriedly conduct what is considered by many a poorly written Congress of sorts, to which we boycotted because we knew it failed to meet whatever standards the party has put in place, the party constitution has put in place. And it's been clearly described that way by many institutions within the party itself, including the most important institution, the Inspection Commission, plus the great majority, the majority, not the great majority, but more than half of the Central Committee members of the party have boycotted the meeting. Well, I call it a meeting, they call it Congress. So that splinter group wants to portray itself as the real repositories of the true sense of TPLF, whilst those of us who are still in the business of trying to figure out how to better conduct ourselves beg to differ. So the jury is out, but as far as we're concerned, because this is a Congress that has been conducted without the blessing of the various critical institutions of the party itself, including a larger chunk of the Central Committee, but equally important, the 4 of the Executive Committee members made a rather duplicitous move to get the party registered in accordance with the new legislation, although the decision by the Central Committee and the senior leadership of TPLF was that this matter should be taken care of in a manner that takes into account the need to engage the federal government in continuous dialogue. So rather than sticking to the decision by the Central Committee, the 4 Executive Committee members went ahead and made a move to register the organization, which has created an uproar in many quarters of Tigray, more importantly in the rank and file leadership. But before that becomes nightmarish, the 4 Executive Committee members took it upon themselves to concoct some kind of I would say a fake Congress to install themselves back in power. It's very unfortunate. The very people who, the constitution of the party clearly provides that anyone who is older than 65 should not compete for a Central Committee seat. Now this fake Congress had to decide to amend this particular provision so that people who are older than 65 would once again be elected. And it was rather weird because my contention was that even young by their standards, but almost about to turn 50, I consider myself too old for that position. But well, I'm not complaining about people of their age not having potentially having the capabilities to lead an organization, but in this particular case, to try and change and to try and assert control by amending the party's constitution midway through the process. That smacks of the kind of rent-seeking politics that's prevalent in many parts of Africa. But TPLF's tradition doesn't allow for that kind of chicanery, but it's very unfortunate. This exercise has degenerated to that level.
All right. How about its implications to the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement?
Well, the implications are that the interim administration is established under the auspices of the Pretoria Agreement. Of course, the federal government has a role in it. So if the federal government takes issue with the way this Congress is conducted, which it has, and then obviously whatever the protestations by the splinter group should not be allowed to create obstacles. But I cannot say that my colleagues who are now in the splinter group would rest on their laurels, because this exercise being a result of an unqualified power struggle, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to impose their version of administration. But that's absolutely unacceptable, because the interim administration cannot and should not be subject to the whims of a splinter group, simply because it has decided it's been robbed of its presidency or its power by their own colleague, who unfortunately they have difficulty trusting. Not because he lacks the credentials, but simply because he often begs to differ on some issues. Not on all issues, but on some issues. So would it have an impact? My understanding is that it will not and should not have an impact. And that doesn't, however, mean that the splinter group wouldn't say things that are meant to complicate matters. But that should be taken care of within the context of the regulation that establishes the interim administration. And of course, we have we are supposed to have a strategic reflection meeting at the AU level come next November. Whatever issues there are will play themselves out then. Whether it is this splinter group that represents TPLF, or whether this is the larger chunk which has boycotted the Congress, which would represent TPLF. As far as we're concerned, we are the ones who should represent TPLF, because we haven't done anything that stands in the way of the full implementation of Pretoria. So to the extent that there are people who would like to take the law into their own hands and try to assert control, that is going to be unacceptable. But let's wait and see. I'm not imputing it, I'm not attributing intentions to them out of the blue. I know what the intentions could be, but as far as I know, this will not and should not affect the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. But not for lack of trying.
How about your relationship with the federal government? How are you taking care of?
Well, I mean, the relationship with the federal government, as long as we are discharging our responsibility as part of the interim administration, the federal government can only have issues if we carry out activities that are deemed illegal. But when it comes to the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, for example, we don't have to act like a bureaucratic appendage of the federal government. That's not going to be the case, and that has never been the case. I know there is so much jostling, even on the part of the splinter group, to try to impress on the federal government that they are better suited, better placed to govern in Tigray than the whole bunch of interim administration leaders, myself included. Whether that will play itself out the way they want it, that's an entirely different story. But I wouldn't expect the federal government to entertain such an idea, as long as these federal institutions which have been involved in this process don't feel that their dictats have been overlooked by this splinter group. So to the extent that there is a need for holding a Congress, because there is, we have to make sure that all the members of the party are consulted, all the bylaws of the constitution of the party are absolutely observed, and of course we'll take the matter at any level, in fact engage in dialogue with the federal government and do whatever it takes, because this is the commitment we made to our members and the Central Committee and to other critical institutions within the party, including the Audit Commission, the Inspection Commission.
There was recent remarks by Ethiopia Government Communication Service Minister that amount to war threats by main Tigrayans. What are your responses to this? It's
absolutely reckless to assume that a splinter groups conducting of a Congress would amount to a declaration of war. You know, it's very unfortunate that you know, officials, some federal officials, are prone to making gaffes the people of Tigray are enjoying this relative peace, although this peace has to extend to other parts of Tigray as well. We need to make sure that all the IDPs are returned, and the interim administration extends its reach all over Tigray in accordance with the Pretoria agreement. And this has been taking longer than necessary because there has been feet dragging on both on the part of the federal government or other actors that will be affected by its implementation, including the Amhara regional administration. And there are also, I cannot also say that we have been investing every resource that we have at our disposal to expedite the process. So I cannot say that we are free from any blame whatsoever, but the larger chunk of the blame would go to the other party, quite naturally. But like I told you, the statements, such unfortunate statements by some officials in the federal government should be condemned, because this is, look, it's not even TPLF as a whole. It's a smaller group which tried to convince the federal authorities that it will abide by the electoral laws, newly promulgated proclamation. And then it felt that it was not particularly popular among the larger public and the members of the party. And then they decided that they should go their own way anyway. So the federal authorities, the electoral board has clearly indicated that that would be unacceptable. And I wasn't surprised that the federal communications, whatever, made similar remarks as well. But the remarks made by the minister were absolutely uncalled for. But to always, sort of brandish this whole idea of reignition of war as though just fighting a war is a picnic, that's absolutely unacceptable. But having said that, we'll continue to press on the implementation of Pretoria, and we will continue to work closely with the federal government on all other matters where the interests of Tigray are concerned. But all along, we'll continue to not just condemn, but also take issue with such unfortunate remarks, wherever they come from, whether from higher up or from low-level functionaries.
How about the occupied territories? Can you give us an update to status of these occupied territories, most of them by Amhara forces and Eritrean forces?
Yeah, I mean, the issue of Raya and Tsellemt has more or less been taken care of. There still are a number of outstanding issues to be addressed, but by and large, the IDPs in those areas have been returned, and there still are some lingering issues because in our recent evaluation, we have clearly pointed out some intransigence on the part of some Amhara officials who tried to obstinately try and change the reality on the ground. It is an exercise in futility as far as we're concerned, because you're not going to tell people from Tigray to adopt an Amhara identity or anything of the sort. But whatever the shenanigans there, though, our evaluations have made it clear that we have to go ahead and clear whatever obstacles there are for complete normalization in those areas. And the next step, which is long overdue, is the issue of Western Tigray, and we'll proceed in accordance with. In fact, we'll draw lessons from whatever experience we had in Raya and Tsellemt, and try and avoid some of the pitfalls that complicated matters in those areas, so that we'll not be making the same mistakes in Western Tigray. It's long overdue, but it's a work in progress.
And any efforts to bring back the refugees in Sudan that are displaced?
Yes, that's part of the process. The refugees in Sudan are going to be part of the return of IDPs And of course, we need all kinds of efforts, all kinds of support by the international community, because the issue of resources is quite staggering. Because the interim administration is strapped for cash. We try to put some money, some resources in these efforts, but in light of the enormity of the challenge the IDPs have been facing, returning them home, especially in the case of Western Tigray, is going to be quite daunting. So we need all kinds of support from the international community. The federal government also needs to step up to the plate and do whatever it takes to support the process. Although so far it hasn't been forthcoming, we'll definitely pull something off. So the issue of the refugees in Sudan is also part of the package.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
This was all for today's Direct Talk. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay informed and take care.